think you learn so much from them. And what I like is they're not perfect. You know what I mean? You see their pimples and their scars, and you hear their gas when they blow their nose, and you hear all kind of stuff about them, right? Where a lot of other books, let's face it, they only give you the good side of people. I like the Bible because it gives you the whole nasty business, and it's encouraging to me. We looked at, and we're talking about getting beyond our belief, to really experience God, and not just believe in Him, but every day have a relationship with Him. We talked about Abraham, the way God interrupts our lives and gives us things that we're supposed to do that maybe we weren't expecting. And how if we say yes, we can see God doing things like divine astonishments, but He brings those surprises and those things in your life that you never expected. I never thought we would get back to Marshallburg. How you like that name? That's the town, Marshallburg. No street lights, it's so tiny. It's got one main road that circles around and a couple of little side streets. Everybody knows one another. The main names are Moore, Davis, and Willis. The whole town has 3 names. You grow up there, you live there, you die there. Everything's passed on to the family. It's just starting to sell other properties, and strangers are coming into the town. You stand at our house, you look down the driveway, and there's the creek. But the creek to you would be a huge pond. A huge pond, but it's the creek. And if you look this way down the street, there's the big harbor where all the shrimp boats are. And then where those two meet takes you out to the sound. Sound is, you would call it the ocean, but it's not the ocean. You go across the sound and you come to the Atlantic Ocean, and then you're the real ocean. So it's just water everywhere you look. We go over to Harker's Island. Harker's Island is named, it was settled by the people in England who harked or called out stuff on the streets. Have you ever seen My Fair Lady? You know what she talked like that? Would you like to buy a lovely bunch of They have a Cockney accent and a Southern drawl, so they're all going to type. So I'm going to get in terms for see and they say something like, "Did they speak English?" So it's really a neat experience. Would love for you all to go. I really would, but it's hot as all get out. So we were surprised that God let us go down there and get that break. Not expected at all. That's what He does. He also reminds us of His heavenly presence. I just kept, every morning I'd wake up and just look out at the creek and all, and just be like, you know, to think that the God who did all this just walks with me. It's just awesome. And His presence is constantly with us. We looked at Jacob. Then we looked at Ruth and realized that God provides. He just takes care of us. We don't deserve it, but He does, and I'm so glad He does. We looked at the fact that through Hannah's life, God listens to us and He hears our burdens. He understands us when nobody else does. Do you ever feel like sometimes people just don't understand you? They just don't get it? Well, if you don't, you're lucky. I feel that way all the time. I feel like some people just don't understand me. And I'm getting to the age where I really don't care. But God hears me, and He understands. Remember Hannah? Remember the second wife who made fun of her? Then she's praying and the pastor comes along, "Are you drunk?" I mean, poor Hannah. But God was listening and gave her His son. We looked last week at David. What unbelievable mess he stirred up, right? But even through all of it, God still loved him. And I don't know about you, but I'm really glad that God loves us no matter what. That even when we blow it, even when we screw up, when it's so horrible, He still loves us. And that's really wonderful. So some questions like we always start every week. Have you ever been in a situation where you had to wait to find out what to do? Have you? Somebody want to share what that was like or what happened? Or you all have never had to wait for an answer?
When deciding majors, history versus English, I prayed and waited, and then I got my answer.
Good. Anybody else? That's been my whole life. That's been my life. I quit Arlington, what do I do now? I mean, it's just, that's been my life. What is it like to wait for instructions? What is it like? Now, don't even think just about God and church. You come into class and you got a big test. And you're sitting there waiting to find out what to do. What's that like?
You're frustrated.
Frustrated. Nervous. Right? Doesn't that also apply to Christianity? I mean, we get frustrated as Christians? Yes, we do. We get nervous? Yes, we do. And you're going to see that today in the person we look at. What's it like to wait for God to speak? It's the same way. Is it worse sometimes when you wait for God to speak? Yeah, because it's important. Right?
It usually takes longer.
Ah, seems to take forever, doesn't it? We're like, God, you have 5 minutes to tell me what to do. God's like, try 5 days. Right? Or he answers in 10 minutes, and you're like, It's really hard sometimes to wait. But that's what we're going to look at today. This is our Bible character, and he's picking bread out of a raven's mouth. Neat. Do you know who that is? This proves that the Baltimore Ravens are scriptural, they're in the Bible. We're talking today about the fact that God speaks. God speaks to us. And we're going to be looking at 1 Kings 19, 1 to 16. And we're looking at the life of Elijah. Elijah. Okay? So go to 1 Kings chapter 19. And we'll be reading sections like we did last week and talking. Let's give you some background information. Right now, David is gone, and we have King Omri over Israel. Okay, so he's the king over Israel. The problem with Omri is he wanted Israel to worship other gods because he was really involved with the Canaanites. Israel, you know, is small, right? The Canaanites were around them and had a lot of land and had wealth. And King Omri wanted that. So he tried to get along with them. But the biggest problem is they worship a god called Baal. And Israel worshiped God. The one and only true God. And so King Omri tried to change that. And he introduced idols and idol worship into Israel. Can you imagine? This is the people who walked across the Red Sea. Right? I mean, think about it. And sure enough, they just follow along. Because he was so concerned. So what he does is he has his son marry Jezebel. Everybody's heard about Jezebel, right? You hear that name and it's like, ooh. She was a nasty woman. She was. Nasty, nasty, nasty. Jezebel hates God, and she forces the worship of Baal on all the people of Israel. But there's more to the story than that, too. Does everybody understand the background so far? Elijah just humiliated and destroyed Baal and his prophets. What happened? Elijah went to an area called Mount Carmel. And when he got to Mount Carmel, he gathered together 450 prophets of Baal. And Elijah. Everybody got that? They built an altar. Put up the stones, they put on the wood, they bring the sacrificed animal to there, and he says, show me your God. Tell your God to come and consume the offering and accept it. 450 men, dancing, shouting, screaming. Elijah goes, I don't think he can hear you. You need to be louder. They get more frantic. They start cutting themselves, sacrificing their own blood. Baal, Baal, come. Elijah says, maybe he's busy. Actually, what the Hebrew says is the idea of maybe he's going to the bathroom. So, I mean, he's really teasing them terrible. Oh, he's taking a crap. He can't hear you. Finally, they collapse. Well, if you're losing blood and you've been dancing for hours, yeah, they were pooped. They die. No, they don't die. They fall over. They get out of the way. Elijah digs a trench big hole all around the sacrifice. He says, bring me water. They bring him jugs of water and jugs of water. And they fill up the trench. He says, bring me more jugs. He pours, I forget how many jugs over the sacrifice, all over the rocks. The whole area is just dripping in water. And Elijah steps aside and says, that they might know that you are the only true God, the God of Israel. Accept this sacrifice. Fire comes from heaven. Now, you ready for this? This is my favorite part as a kid. It burns up the offering, the wood, the rocks, and the dirt. How you burn dirt? It burns up the dirt. Now, I can remember as a kid going, how you burn up dirt? We don't know, but that's what God did. But how you burn up a rock? I never forgot it. Burnt up the rocks and the dirt. That was some fire. Now you think 450 prophets of Baal have been saved, right? No. So Elijah kills them. All 450 prophets of Baal are killed. So Elijah has just done something awesome for God. Awesome. He faced off of 450 prophets of Baal and he showed himself also as the only true God. Imagine how Elijah was feeling. Right? And that was, I mean, he knew God could do it, but I don't think he expected the rocks and the dirt to burn up. Dirt, that just bothered. How do you burn dirt? If we throw dirt on the fire, it goes out, right? How do you burn dirt? That was some fire. That was Sodom and Gomorrah fire. Destroyed. So let's go to 1 Kings chapter 19. We'll start at verse 1 and read to the beginning of verse 4. It says, Now Ahab told Jezebel everything Elijah had done, and how he had killed all the prophets with a sword. So Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah to say, May the gods deal with me, be it ever so severely, if by this time tomorrow I do not make your life like that of one of them. Or in other words, I'm going to kill you by tomorrow. What are the next three words?
Elijah was afraid.
Elijah was afraid and ran for his life. When he came to Beersheba in Judah, he left his servant there, while he himself went a day's journey into the desert. Did you hear those words? He was afraid. She kills all the prophets of Israel and sends word, you're next, Turkey. Oh, you may think you got something, you ain't got nothing, you're dead. You got 24 hours and you're going to be dead. She sends word to Elijah and he runs. Think for a minute. He just saw fire consume rock and dirt, and he runs because he's afraid. Does that make sense to you? Not at all. If anybody should stand up and go, bring it on, Jezebel, it should have been Elijah. A woman sends a threatening word, and he gets afraid and runs. What happened? Let me show you where he ran. You ready? This is Mount Carmel. This is where he defeated the Baal and the prophets. He ran to Beersheba. Yeah, I'm glad you said that. Because most people are like, oh, he ran. No. This brother ran hundreds of miles. He ran. Went to the farthest part you could go. Ridiculous. He was afraid. It's amazing to me. It just amazes me. Look at verse 4b. End of verse 4. He went a day's journey into the desert. He came to a broom tree, sat down under it, and prayed that he might die. I have had enough, Lord, he said. Take my life. I am no better than my ancestors. Are you kidding me? He just had a huge victory for the Lord, and now he's wanting to die. He defeats 450 prophets, and yet he's afraid of Jezebel. It makes you question, Have you ever had an experience in life where God did something awesome? And you really had a spiritual experience? Has anybody ever had that? Because after you do that, it's usually followed by depression and feelings of... Every Sunday when I go home, I do total praise, we do the journey, Bible study, now we're doing the voice lessons, they have lunch, then we do ESL. By the time I go home, I'm like, I always ask Miss Karen, was church okay? Was it a waste of time? Was it any good? Could you get anything out of it? I don't know why. It's the way it is. It's really weird. And it's really hot. And that's where Elijah is. He's hitting rock bottom. He's also now literally physically exhausted, right? Brother just ran across 59 states. What? So he's spiritually exhausted, emotionally exhausted, and physically exhausted. He's down for the count. You ever been there or felt that way? Now you know why I love this story. I love this story. So exciting. It's just like us. We get that same way. Because sometimes we get tired and we get weary. It's like, let's jump into verse 5 to the beginning of verse 9. Then he lay down under the tree and fell asleep. All at once, we have no idea how much longer, but all at once an angel touched him and said, "Get up and eat." He looked around, and there by his head was a cake of bread baked over hot coals and a jar of water. He ate and drank, and then lay down again. The angel of the Lord came back a second time, we don't know how long, and touched him and said, "Get up and eat, for the journey is too much for you." So he got up and ate and drank. Strengthened by that food, he traveled 40 days and 40 nights until he reached Horeb, the mountain of God. There he went into a cave and spent the night. What I love about this story is God does not come along and beat him upside the head. Twice God sends his angels with food, and all they say is, "Get up and eat, you need your strength." Isn't that just like his unconditional love we talked about last week? Now you know God could have said, "Fool. You blooming idiots. I burned up the rocks and the dirt and you're afraid of Jezebel? What is your freaking problem?" Right? But instead God goes, "Wake up and eat and go back to sleep." It's awesome. It's just so awesome. It's his unconditional love. And we get so busy in life that we miss this when God does that for us. It's awesome. The story continues, ending 9 to the beginning of 11. And the word of the Lord came to him. In other words, God speaks to Elijah. "What are you doing here, Elijah?" He replied, and listen to his reply, "I have been very zealous for the Lord God Almighty. The Israelites have rejected your covenant." So he knew who he was talking to. "Broken down your altars and put your prophets to death with a sword. I'm the only one left, and now they're trying to kill me too." The Lord said, "Go out and stand on the mountain in the presence of the Lord, for the Lord is about to pass by." Cool beans. This time God has a different tone. First time his angels came, right? "Get up and eat. Now rest." Now God says, "Okay, look, what's the problem? I fed you twice. You've had enough rest. That's over. Why are you still lying here?" Cool. He's done taking care of them. It's time to get back to work. Elijah expresses his fear and frustration as he's now the lone wolf. He's I'm the only prophet left. Can't you hear him doing it? Can't you see him? Don't you do that? "Nobody understands me. Nobody likes me. I don't want to do it anymore. Please." God says, "Okay, look, get up and go outside. I'm about to show up. I'm about to encourage you again. Everybody with the story? Pretty awesome. Get exciting. Get ready. Here's the coolest part. 11b to 13a. Then a great and powerful wind tore the mountain apart and shattered the rocks before the Lord. But the Lord wasn't in the wind. After the wind there was an earthquake. But the Lord wasn't in the earthquake. After the earthquake there was a fire. But the Lord wasn't in the fire. After the fire came a gentle whisper. When Elijah heard it, he pulled his cloak over his face and went out and stood in the mouth of the cave. God didn't show up. He didn't do the special effects of the wind and the earthquake and the fire. He had already done that, hadn't he? That's what he did at Mount Carmel with the prophets of Baal. He needed Elijah to realize he was also the God that comes in the quiet whispers. He's not just this big showy God. Sometimes it's still, it's the quiet. And I think that's a problem we have in America. We're so busy that we don't have the time to hear God's quiet whispers. God speaks to you through customers. He speaks to you through bosses and co-workers. He speaks to you by something you hear on the radio, people on the street, teachers, fellow students. God speaks in still, small, quiet ways. There are moments of great wind, earthquake, and fire. But I believe there are more moments of quiet, still whispers. Are you listening? He does speak. What's one of the biggest ways he speaks to you? The Bible. That's why we have accountability, right? That's how he speaks to us. Are you listening? Finally, 13b to the end of the story. Then a voice said to him, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" There's God again. "Okay, you're still standing here." He replied, now listen to his reply, same old song, same old dance. "I have been very zealous for the Lord God Almighty. The Israelites have rejected your covenant, broken down your altars, and put your prophets to death with the sword. I'm the only one left, and now they're trying to kill me too." You know God would be like, you know what, I'm about to slap you into tomorrow. But listen to God's reply. The Lord said to him, "Go back the way you came and go to the desert of Damascus. When you get there, anoint Hazael king over Aram. Also anoint Jehu, son of Nimshi, king over Israel, and anoint Elisha, son of Shaphat, from Abel Meholah, to succeed you as prophet." Basically what God says is get it together. Stop wallowing. You've got things to do. You got things to do. But notice that there was a time for Elijah to wallow, wasn't it? There was a time for him to rest. There was a time for him to get it back together. And so God allows us those moments where we just are like, "Lord, I don't know if I can do this anymore. Is it making a difference? Does it do anything?" But then God comes along and says, "Okay, it's my time now. You got something to do. Get up. Let's go." That's the lesson. It's not unusual for us to get tired and depressed after doing some awesome things for God. Know that. It's very typical. You've been spent spiritually, emotionally, and sometimes physically, and that's when Satan comes along and really can hit you hard. That's normal. You're not abnormal. Maybe. He shows us love and compassion, but only for a season until he wants us to do more. He allows us those moments to chillax, take it easy, unwind. We should not always expect God to show up in the big showy ways, but we should be ready to hear his still small voice. He'll do the big showy things. He'll cure cancer. He'll heal. He'll provide. He'll change circumstances. But he also has quiet ways to speak to you. Are you open to those? And we always have something to do for the Lord as long as you're alive. Please know that. As long as you are alive, God has something for you to do. These people who say, well, I've done that enough, it's time for somebody else to take over. There are no, you're always a commissioned officer in God's army. You're always in the workforce. When you die, okay, then you can rest. Because you always have something to do for the Lord. It's never over. So I want you to hear God speak to you today. I want you to, we're going to have communion. I want you to come up and just open yourself up and ask God to speak to me. Help me get to hear you in small ways. Help me to realize that there are moments when it does get overwhelming and you love me through those and you care for me. But help me to hear your small voice that says it's time to get busy again. Help me to be obedient. I read 1 Corinthians chapter 11 to you. It is the verses of preparation. Then I call you to silence when you have prepared your heart and confessed your sin and you're ready. Come to the table. Celebrate the Lord's death until he comes.